Good afternoon and welcome to the latest Milwaukee Press Club virtual newsmaker. I'm your host for today, Press Club President Gene Miller from News Radio 620 WTMJ, where I also host Wisconsin Morning News. We're honored today to have Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers as our guest. He will be interviewed by a panel of three, and that'll be coming up shortly. But first, we need to thank our sponsors, the folks who help make all of this happen. Our Spectrum One presenting sponsor, as well as our sustaining sponsor, Miller Koss. And then our event partners, of course, WizPolitics.com. They partner with the Press Club for these luncheons, or in this case, these virtual events, as part of its ongoing event series here in Milwaukee, sponsored by UW Milwaukee, the Wisconsin Academy of Global Education and Training, 1125 at PAPS, the Milwaukee Police Association, the Firm Consulting, Medical College of Wisconsin, as well as Spectrum. Once again, our guest today is Tony Evers, the 46th governor of Wisconsin, a past teacher, past principal, past district superintendent, and served 10 years as Wisconsin's superintendent of public instruction, became governor of Wisconsin January 7th, 2019. Without further ado, the governor of the state of Wisconsin, Tony Evers.
Thanks so much, Dean, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And this is somewhat of a momentous day. I heard on the weather last night that today would be we set a record for the lowest high temperature. And I think we're right around 54 degrees here in Madison. So it's a big day all the way around. We have a record to, I don't know what to celebrate, but we have a record. So it's good to be back again to meet with you. Last time I was supposed to be here with you, I had to cancel because I was declaring public health emergency around COVID-19, and who'd have thought that by the time we got around to rescheduling another one, we'd be doing it virtually. Pleased to be able to do it even by Zoom. I know that's become part and parcel of all of our lives, and a good way to communicate. Obviously not the best, but it's important to also recognize that in this time of pandemic, hosting events online instead of in person is doing what exactly we want to happen in the state of Wisconsin as it relates to moving the needle on COVID-19. So 2020 hasn't exactly been and it's been an unprecedented year, I would say. Clearly, the global pandemic that I just mentioned continues to wreak havoc on the country and to a lesser extent on our state, but it's had a toll. 1,160 Wisconsinites have passed away. Families, workers, businesses, and others are in difficult financial circumstances, and we've had to adapt. And frankly, this is the longest activation of the Wisconsin National Guard in Wisconsin history. So at the same time, we're also dealing with the issues of systemic racism that has brought new emphasis around that all across the state of Wisconsin, from our smallest communities to our largest communities, and obviously played out in the city of Kenosha just recently, where we're hopefully bringing people to heal and rebuild. And obviously what happened to Jacob Blake was a real unfortunate and sad occasion to see another Black man facing and dealing with the issue of being shot by police, white police in particular. So, but that again, it gave people an opportunity to step up and talk about racial inequities in this state, and it also obviously brought some bad actors to Kenosha and bad acting to Kenosha that no one should tolerate. But at the end of the day, we have to work to have that comeback. And WEDC, we're working with them to get that $1 million to the Kenosha Comeback Fund to help businesses with microloans at no interest to them. And that's just the beginning. Clearly other things will have to be done to make that community whole. In addition to, frankly, the it's also very important that we look at the issue of policing in the state of Wisconsin and having good conversations around that. In addition, if you look at the last year, we, or since I've been in office, lame duck sessions, lawsuits over challenging my vetoes, gaveling in and out of session, whether it's agriculture, whether it's gun safety, education, having an election in the middle of a pandemic last April, where we ended up with 1.2 million mail-in ballots. So those are all things that were extremely complex, and I'm just proud of the people of Wisconsin. We've had things to struggle around, but I think we're in a good place going forward. I never thought this job would be a walk in the park. I ran because of really important things: better roads, better schools, better healthcare. And I also continue to believe there's more that unites us than divides us. And so I feel really confident about the future. There's a lot more work that we have to do. And just to cycle back to the pandemic, we've done whatever we could to listen to the science, listen to the public health experts, and we're going to continue to do that. In the pandemic, we have to understand that public health is not a partisan issue. Science should not be a partisan issue. We've got to keep each other safe, and the virus, frankly, doesn't know whether we're Republicans or Democrats. We just have to make sure that we're doing the things we need to do in the state of Wisconsin to keep safe and keep people healthy. The issues that challenge us, again, are difficult. There's lots of work to be done, but again, I'm very confident in the strength and the resilience of Wisconsinites to do the right thing. And so with that, I will turn it over to the folks that want to grill me in a really comprehensive way, so that everybody knows that the questions are answered in a complete way. Thanks a lot for doing this, Gene.
Thank you, Governor, for joining us. Let's meet today's grillers. That would be LaToya Dennis from WUWM Milwaukee Public Radio, Victor Jacobo, Capitol reporter for CBS 58, and Patrick Marley, state politics reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. LaToya, we'll start with you.
So sticking with the topic of the coronavirus, the organization WILL has said that it plans to sue the state and Governor Evers, you, over your emergency orders that were issued at the end of July, not over the mask mandate, but they see the orders as an extension of the first. Do you think your order will stand up? Well,
and LaToya, thanks for the question. Again, this is just, my level of frustration on this is pretty high. We knew WILL would be either taking us to court, or the Republicans would go directly to the Supreme Court. Whichever way it is, it's clear this for the Republican side, this is not about safety. This is about essentially taking away authority of the governor of the state of Wisconsin, whether it's me or somebody else. And so it's disappointing, but it certainly was not a surprise to us that WILL did that. Right now, I think it is in a county circuit court, and but the bottom line is, every time that we are put in the position of either legally or otherwise pulling back on what the science tells us to do, our ability to make this pandemic go away becomes less and less. And that makes no sense. Everybody knows, even Donald Trump knows, even though he never wears a mask. I think I saw him once. But a mask saves lives. A mask controls the outbreak. The mask is something where you are protecting me and I'm protecting you. It's just basic stuff. And our data seems to indicate that anecdotal and otherwise that it's made a difference. Obviously, there's folks in the state of Wisconsin that don't want to wear masks that do wear masks now. And so I feel good about it. It lasts until I think the 28th of September, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there, whether we extend it or not. But we believe it was an absolutely legal public health emergency to talk about. When things change, and they change dramatically from when we did the first one to the second one, the number of cases, the number of deaths, frankly, the mobility of people changed dramatically from those two events. So things were substantively different. That's what our argument will be in court, and we'll see whether the court agrees with us or not. But it is very important, and we will fight. We will fight every step of the way to make sure that this one small thing that everybody can do remains in place until the numbers are down.
Now, I'd like to follow up on something you said, and that's that the masks they're shown to make a difference here. And I'm asking about this because lately numbers, obviously fewer people are being tested, but the percentage of those tests that are coming back positive is much, much higher, 17, 18%, I believe that's what I was seeing. So
Right.
What are you pointing to showing that the masks are helping?
Well, the comment I was making was more about that it's making a difference in that more people are wearing the mask than before. That's clearly been a difference. And yes, I'm concerned, as you are, Latoya, about the number seemingly increasing. It's attributed to several things that we're still working on, but the main one is clearly the number of tests have gone down. Some of that has to do with reagents. Some of that has to do with, I think there's a bit of test fatigue, although I just heard yesterday that the Madison community testing site had 3,500 people go through it in one day. And so I think the number of things that are playing into place has accelerated that positivity rate. But that rate for me is a important one. So we need to know exactly why, but some of those reasons I just talked about are. But the fact is, though, that the magic number from many of the experts is 5%, and we've been setting aside just the last last week when our testing numbers went down, the number. We've been a little stuck in neutral between 5 and 10%. That's a concern, but that just means to me that we need to do a better job of not only wearing masks, but when you're in small areas with a lot of people without a mask, that's a problem, whether that's bars, restaurants, or parties. And we need to continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank
Victor?
you.
Thank you, Governor, for taking the time to answer these questions. Staying on the topic of COVID, we've gone from different stages of the friction that happened with Safer at Home, the friction of encouraging people to wear masks. And it looks like maybe the next area where some friction may be is with vaccines. A CBS poll found that 21% of Americans say that if they would get a vaccine if it were available as soon as possible. However, that's a pretty low number, and there seems to be some hesitancy because a majority say that if there was a vaccine available this year, a majority say they would consider it a rushed job rather than a scientific achievement. I want to ask you, if the Trump administration announces this year that a vaccine is available between now and January, would you take it, or would you side with some of those Americans who have concerns that maybe there's some hesitancy there and it's a rush job?
Yeah, I would take it, but I'll tell you if I had to prioritize people to get the vaccine, I wouldn't be one of them. I would focus on the frontline workers, whether nurses, doctors, nurses, aides, the folks that work in our hospitals that are trying to save lives, and also our EMTs and police and fire departments. Those to me are first. But the bigger question that you're asking is people's willingness to take any vaccine related to this. And I don't want to make this our hour here beating up on Donald Trump because it just wears me out. But when you have a national leader who has vacillated up and down, whether there is such a thing as a pandemic and there isn't, that it's hoax and it's not, and now we're making promises about election day, and it politicizes it in a way that it shows up now in polls with 20%. I think, do I have faith in the scientists that are doing this? Yes. Does that bother me that the president is saying it's going to be ready by November 3rd or before? He doesn't know any more than I do, frankly, and I just wouldn't make those statements. And so the fact of the matter is it's been politicized so much that we now have 20% saying that. That's unfortunate. Yes, I would take the test because I believe that CDC and I believe that scientists that are working on it. I mean, clearly, it's not all going to be roses and a bed of roses. Frankly, we just saw one of the firms that are working on it had to temporarily stop it, and that temporary stop probably isn't any different than any other process that's been used in the last 50 years. It's just that it's become so politicized. Now it becomes an issue. Now people are going to say this process is never going to work. Well, that's the way the process works. When they do testing, people volunteer for it, and when it doesn't work, they have to go to Plan B. But because we have the politics that we do, it's not a good thing when 20% say it. I still trust the scientists. If they come up with a test, I take it, but I would not be one to volunteer because I think there's to have me be first, there's a whole bunch of other people that should have it first.
When it does become available, whether that's this year, next year, or later than that, do you think there's a necessity to require it, put it in statute to require any sort of people in Wisconsin to take the vaccine?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily have an opinion on that. I am a strong believer in vaccines, period. I know there's a handful of people in the state, a small percentage that do not. So I believe that requiring it is the right thing. I just don't know if it's feasible in this political environment. I would say that once we get through a reasonable time, that we would get most of the people taking that vaccine. It's important. It's important for our economy. It's important for our well-being, and I believe we'll get it to the point where most people, the vast majority, will take it.
Thank you. I'll pass it off to my peer and colleague, Patrick Marley.
Thanks, Victor, and thanks, Governor, for taking these questions from us. What I wanted to know is, looking back at what happened in Kenosha, do you think that you should have accepted the initial offer of help from the White House to bring some kind of more federal presence here?
Yeah, and thanks, Patrick, for asking that question. Clearly, I would not change anything that I did, and I'll tell you why. We met every request the city and the county of Kenosha asked us. I think it was 3 o'clock on Monday a.m. on Monday morning, they asked for 125, I think. We put 125 on National Guard on the ground sometime during the day on Monday. And when we made that commitment, we also made a commitment to double that the next day. So by the time I had a call from Mark Meadows, it was Tuesday afternoon, and we had already had people on the ground since Monday. We had made the commitment to double that on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so the pieces were in place. I have to tell you that I did turn down the bringing in the Homeland Security people because I saw how poorly that played out in Portland. I didn't think that would be a good thing. So I talked to Meadows on Tuesday afternoon and said those two things. He talked about the Homeland Security. I said no. he talked about the National Guard. And I said, I understand the National Guard is a state issue, and we already have people on the ground, and we're expanding that as we speak. And then he passed me off to the president, and the president, and maybe that he passed me off to the president. I talked to him for 5 minutes or less. He made the pitch about, we have to get the National Guard on the ground. I said, they already are. We've met every request. And he talked about how important it was in Minnesota having the National Guard. I said, yes, we already have the National Guard in place. And that was the end of the conversation. He went off on a different tangent there for a minute. And then the next afternoon, I think it was, Meadows called back, and this was after obviously a very difficult night. And I said, we are still in a place where we are doubling every day. And as we speak, actually, it began the previous day, where the Adjutant General was already reaching out to other states. And he said, and I reminded him of that. And he said, well, we have some assets that we can, that we've talked to in the National Guard. And I said, I'll tell you what, you give that information to our Adjutant General, and he can, instead of both of us calling other states, let's just have one person, one group doing it. It's a state responsibility anyway. And whatever information that your folks have around National Guards people that are available, pass that off to our Adjutant General, and so that we don't have a hodgepodge of people calling everybody. And he agreed to that. In fact, I think he called it a hodgepodge himself. And so that's what happened. I didn't agree to anything because I know the National Guard is a state responsibility. We have to have memoranda of understanding between and among those states, and we did that. But to say that we could have done anything different as it relates to working with the White House, I have no regrets, because the only thing I said no to was Homeland Security, and I knew that would be not work out in Kenosha because of what I saw in Portland.
Thanks. And then also regarding an issue in Kenosha, the Jacob Blake's family has said they'd like to see the officer, Rustin Shesky, charged with a crime, and for that to happen soon. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have also said they'd like to see that. Would you like to see the officer charged?
Yeah, and I've been real clear on that too, right from the get-go. What I've talked about is what I've seen, and obviously what the Attorney General has talked about. But what I saw was African-American man getting into his car, and he was shot 7 times by a police officer. And what it was also obvious is that he's paralyzed now from the waist down. I am waiting, as are other people, for the legal obligations to the Attorney General to complete his study and his analysis of the data in Kenosha, and that will be turned over to the district attorney. So I'm awaiting his remarks to weigh in, because I've tried everything in my power to stay on the facts, and the facts as I know it, I've talked about, and the ones that I don't know about, I have tried not to talk about.
Thank you. I will hand it back to LaToya.
Sure.
Thank you. You know, the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha has renewed the conversations about inequities that people of color face here in Wisconsin. You know, we have the largest Black-white achievement gap when it comes to Black infants and maternal mortality. Our numbers are far outpacing most other states. I wonder, one, do you believe your administration is doing enough to help bring some of these problems that we're talking about in line? Well,
yes, I'd like to do more. There's no question about it. I've never, when I was state superintendent, when I was state superintendent, I knew that there's disproportionate outcomes for African Americans and other people, other kids of color, and also people that live in poverty. Absolutely, I know that, but that's one of the, frankly, reasons I ran for governor is I felt as state superintendent, while I recognize that, we did whatever we could via resources and other opportunities to close that gap. We had to connect the dots, and as governor, I was hopeful to be able to connect those dots because students, whether let's using educational outcomes as an example, those outcomes are absolutely connected to housing issues. They're absolutely connected to transportation issues. They're absolutely connected to criminal justice issues. You just go right down the line. In fact, I remember when I hired my cabinet members, not all of whom have been approved yet by the Senate, that one of the goals we had as an administration was to connect the dots to alleviate those disproportionate outcomes. Small example, Latoya, and I'm not trying to talk around this, talk around your question, but a small example is Medicaid expansion. We had the opportunity to talk about connecting the dots. Health outcomes among folks of color, particularly our Black population as it relates to the pandemic, we could have had a huge impact on that with Medicaid expansion. We have Republican states all over our country that have embraced Medicaid expansion. Missouri just passed a statewide referendum about Medicaid expansion. That would have given healthcare coverage to 82,000 Wisconsinites. In addition, it would have brought in large sums of money to deal specifically with health outcome issues, whether it be making sure that moms and their babies are well, that they can get through that first year of life in the most healthy way. We needed the resources to do it. The Republicans have absolutely, they call it welfare, which to me is a racist statement, and they won't do it. It takes two to tango here. I understand that we have done whatever we could with CARES money and others to other opportunities as an administration to begin that process of taking care of these outcomes, whether they're health outcomes or criminal justice outcomes. But at the end of the day, we need my partners in the legislature, and in particular my Republican partners, to step up. Criminal justice reform. You think about, I can go through 5 or 6 things that just pop in my head that they're absolutely related to race in this state. It's a national issue, but it's a state issue. So we'll continue to try to connect the dots as best we can without legislative help. But at the end of the day, as we can see with policing, that didn't work, bringing people into a special session. It's a small example of where we need to have the help of the legislature in order to have that happen. And that legislature is presently Republican-led. And I need them in a desperate way to begin this process.
I've been hearing from a contingent of people who say that they're tired of the partisanship, right? Because when you have such a polarized state that not much can happen. How do you think you get back to a point, or is it even possible to get to a point where Democrats and Republicans are actually working together for the good of the people?
Yeah, that's the question of the day. I don't think any other question will top that as far as the bottom line answer is we have to. I get it. I'm a Democrat. There are times when I talk about things in a partisan way, but I also believe that when we start out with a lame duck session and continue on from there, it makes it much more difficult. I am open to any Republican idea. For example, I spent a fair amount of time with Senator Weingard from the Republican side on his thinking around policing and what he has put together. He and I have had general agreement on the general outline of that. So there can be some things done we just, we can't rely on every November or every 2 years to hope that somehow it's going to be resolved. People in Wisconsin, and I'll just use this as the last statement. Once this happened in Kenosha with the unfortunate shooting, the people across the state continue to talk about it in the small towns and in the large towns. So people are expecting us to do something, and we have an opportunity to do it. So I'm very hopeful that these instances, one in Kenosha, one in Minneapolis, the most recent ones, but across the country, have provided an incentive for people to come together. That's my hope and prayer, because I agree with you, Latoya, that people are sick of it. I'm frankly sick of it. And I'd love to be able to say, even the day before the election this year, this is what Republicans and Democrats have achieved together.
Thank you. Victor?
Thank you. Governor, I don't need to tell you like the effects of gerrymandering and what they have on legislators. Part of that is, you have Republicans, mostly white, living in or representing mostly white districts, based on their actions over this past year, where this conversation has risen to the top of many people's minds nationally and here in the state. Do you believe that Republicans have sincerely and genuinely care about the concerns of Black and brown Wisconsinites?
They have to, or they shouldn't be in office. So yes, I believe individually they have, and but you did bring up the issue of gerrymandering, and I'll just tell you my feeling about that. I think obviously our state has been shown to be one of the most gerrymandered states in the country. The Republicans outthought the Democrats 10 years ago and swept into office, and they did the maps. Here's my belief. First of all, our maps should not be Democrat maps. They should not be Republican maps. They should be fair maps. And it's my belief, and this gets a little bit to what Latoya talked about. In order for us to find common ground, we have to have competitive districts. Obviously, not all of them are going to be competitive, but we have to have mostly competitive districts that forces people to compromise. If you have competitive districts, you have to find middle ground, or you're not going to have a damn job in 2 years. You're going to be voted out of office. Unless that, so I believe gerrymandering is at the heart of this issue. I know there's some of my colleagues that are not necessarily all of them, but some of them are hoping for Democratic maps. That would be, frankly, that would be almost worse than what we have now. We have to have competitive races so that people are compelled to compromise and find middle ground, or they just won't be voted into office the next time. So this is really critical to me, and that's why I'm spending, frankly, most of my political time working to make sure that we have the ability for me to veto that gerrymandered map that will arrive at my desk, and that we can move on to a better place.
And kind of on this idea of how divided the state is, politically, there are kind of the rumblings and kind of starts of a recall effort for you. Does that concern you? What level of concern do you have on that? And what do you think that says about this current climate?
It doesn't concern me because I hardly think about it. In fact, I haven't thought about it. But yes, is that an indication of polarization? Yes. I know my neighbor to the east, Governor Whitmer, I think she's had over a dozen recall efforts. Of course, the process there is a lot different than here. And I know that's the same for around the country, and Republican governors too are facing that. So yes, it's a sign of the times. But and I'm hopeful I may be too hopeful, but I do believe that part of the partisanship that has been amped up recently over the last 4 years is due to the president's MO. That's his MO. Not to say that partisanship, lots of it wasn't in place before he became president, but it sure has been ramped up. And we are in a place where we need to have a calm, thoughtful leader in office, and hopefully that will change the conversation.
Thank you. I'll hand it off to Patrick.
Thanks. With COVID, we've seen just a huge increase in the number of unemployment claims. That's true in Wisconsin and other states. And there have been a fair number of people who've been waiting a very long time, weeks or months, to get their benefits. In the spring, your Workforce Development Secretary, Caleb Frostman, said that he hopes to have that cleared as early as August. We've passed that point now. We've got about 100,000 people who are waiting at the moment. When can you say that the backlog will be eliminated?
I'd love to say tomorrow, Patrick. I read the article in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this morning, and to say that I was disappointed would be a vast understatement. I think the author of the article, or authors, talked about four or five separate people who have been waiting since day one. That is unacceptable from my vantage point. I know this is a national issue. I talked to other governors; they're having the same problems we are. I would love to wave a magic wand. We as the pandemic slows down, we should be able to catch up. We should be able. Those four people shouldn't be part of the article in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel or any newspaper in the state at this point in time. That's unacceptable from my vantage point. I hope in the near future to be able to say definitively when we can solve those four problems, but also solve all the problems we have. I can give you the litany of things that I've talked about before, and DWD has talked about before. Those are all true. The federal government changing things, gearing up in a way that answers those questions, and making a much larger workforce. We've done all those things. It's time for us to catch up, and it's my hope to set a date in the near future, because it's just, even though those four people were only four of a larger number, it is just not acceptable from my vantage point that they're facing that at this point in time. And it could be that all four of those there's good reason to deny them. I mean, I'm not saying that, but either deny them or give them what they deserve, one or the other. And I understand that they may have had multiple jobs that people had to go back and then get information from the owners of those businesses, and to find out whether they left on their own or left because they were fired. All those, I understand it, but we've got to get to a better place. And I hope to be able to set a date in the near future.
Do you think this problem could stretch into 2021, or will you be on top of it by then?
It should not. It just basically should not, unless if the feds change something where we have to redo our computer programming and all that. But barring no changes, it should not extend into the next year.
Okay. And then I also wanted to ask you about the campuses. We're seeing a flare up of cases at UW-Madison and other campuses. Do you still support the decision to have some portion of classes in person and bring the students back to campus?
Yeah, Patrick, that's a great question, because it's something that we all know. I know you know, and others in the audience know that this was always going to be a bumpy start to the school year. And so what we knew is coming true. Yes, I support the UW's effort to bring some normalcy to thousands of kids and be safe at the same time. I know they're making a great effort, and students shouldn't be surprised that if they either get COVID or with somebody that has COVID, you're going to be quarantined for 14 days. That's the only way. That is the only way we're going to solve this at the campus level. So I support what they're doing. It's Herculean efforts, and I believe they'll be successful at the end of the day. But we also, and I know people keep telling me that 20-year-olds cannot be responsible. I think they can, and I think 14 days in quarantine would frighten the hell out of me. If I was a 20-year-old, I'd start to wear a mask and stay socially distanced before I did that. So yes, to answer your question, I do support it. I think they're doing a great job. It is an uphill fight, and we have to be prepared that it will be bumpy.
Great, I'll pass it back to LaToya.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'd like to go back to the subject of unemployment benefits for a second, because I know that it's come out that it's going to be several more weeks at least before Wisconsin starts to pay the additional $300 in benefits. And there are people who are really concerned about this at this point. I'm wondering, why so long?
Yeah, it all has to do with the system that we inherited, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time saying it's somebody else's fault, but the fact of the matter is we did know previously. There was a Audit Bureau study of this system years ago and said it needed to be replaced or updated, and it's an old system, and every time that there's a change made, it takes not just days but weeks in order to program it. And we're glad that we're in a position that we can have that $300, and we're accessing that, but it just takes, it's programming time. It's what we're doing today is light years ahead of what that system is.
Might you all look at replacing the system relatively soon? Obviously, that's not something that's going to happen now.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It's obviously also the replacing it is gets more expensive by the year, but we have to look at that. That just is not a satisfactory answer for me as governor to say, well, it's a system, it should have been fixed previously. But what we do need is a different system, and we will be looking at updating that and finding the cost. Hopefully, now speaking of costs, I also have to get a plug in here in case the question isn't asked directly. The federal money ends 12/31. It kind of goes to the vaccine question. Who knows when it's going to be? We don't know for sure. And 12/31 is when the federal money ends. And the state of Wisconsin can't operate at a deficit, and the federal government can. We need help from the federal government going forward too, whether it's around the National Guard, whether it's around, PPE testing. All that is it's got a deadline of 12/31, and I don't think we're going to be done talking about this by 12/31.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it on to Victor.
Thanks.
Governor, a lot of organizations are, figuring out how to operate as this pandemic continues. One of those is the National Football League. They resume their season, or they start their season again this coming weekend. The Packers have said that they're going to, have no fans for the first 2 home games and then reassess after that. I'm wondering if you've had any conversations with them, and if it's your advice to them that they forego fans inside Lambeau Field for this upcoming season, considering the health effects and that being a mass gathering.
Yeah, I have had conversations, a couple with the president of the Packers, talking about this issue, and actually talking about the extraordinary protections they put in place just to bring back their office staff before the players even showed up. It was quite amazing what their requirements were, and I I'll support their decisions. I can't imagine a full field or a full stands at any point this year with the Packers. That would seem to be unlikely unless there is some magical vaccine that we get a whole bunch of, this fall and clean this up this fall. I think that's going to be very, very difficult. So just talking to them, I know they understand this, and I feel confident that they'll make the correct decisions.
And I do, looking ahead to this fall, another thing is, of course, the election. I just want to gauge what's your confidence level, optimism that it's going to be a safe and fair election, and is there any nightmare scenario that keeps you up at night about what may happen?
Yeah, I do have confidence in the system. I know, in the background, the whole cybersecurity thing that the Elections Commission and the National Guard and others are doing. I think that's in good shape. I think we learned a lot during April about what to do and what not to do. And so I think the PPE in the voting places of the polling places is in good shape. I think the numbers of polling workers seems to be good. I know our 6 largest communities are working hard to, I think, actually increase pay to make that happen. We also have National Guard on the standby if people need some more poll workers. So I think that's good. I think we'll have another large number of people that will be voting by mail, and that is very good. So overall, I think the system is in place here in Wisconsin to have a good, safe election. What concerns me and what keeps me up at night is, again, I didn't want to make this conversation much about the president, but if he's going to be continuing to encourage people to be felons and vote twice just to test the system, and for him to talk about falsely that there were 80 million ballots sent out, that's just not true. And people are receiving ballots that didn't ask for them. All that stuff just absolutely, I know, is done to push down the, people saying, good God, I'm not going to bother voting. But at the end of the day, that concerns me. And it has nothing to do with the people at the polls. God love them. They do great. They do a great work, very difficult work. People want to vote. Obviously, people want to vote by mail. We showed that last time. I wouldn't be surprised that we doubled down. The Elections Commission worked with the post office to do the barcode things, so that should be pretty slick. I know that some of our larger cities have acquired more machines to process those ballots so that it's not going to be a week-long event in Wisconsin. So I feel good about all that. It's what's going on in the ether, what the president's talking about. And it just is so frustrating for him to talk about this every single day when he himself votes by mail. I mean, God almighty, be consistent.
Thank you. I'll hand it off to Patrick.
Governor, your administration at one point was looking at releasing the names of businesses or other places that had outbreaks of COVID in some kind of number so that the public would be aware of there were places they might want to avoid. You ultimately, or at least so far, have decided not to do that. Why didn't you decide to release that information?
Well, we believe that it's information that is not public, and that it is it's information that we need to keep in a way that not only protects the businesses, but more importantly, it helps us monitor and helps us answer the questions about outbreaks and how we deal with outbreaks, and do it in a way that isn't a problem for us. And we continue to do this in case there's a second question around schools, because it is too easy to suddenly be releasing that information, and we'd be able to identify students just like we could identify possibly identify workers. So there's some privacy things going on there. It has nothing to do with wanting to be open. And I think there's less of an issue around schools, because most schools that are having issues are releasing that information as soon as they have it.
And I think I'm supposed to pass this back to Gene.
Gene, you're unmuted.
You're muted though.
There I am. I'm back. Thank you
You're
so
there.
much. Yeah, I'm going to take this back over. We have about 10 minutes left with the governor. I wanted to squeeze in some of our questions from our audience. So let's do this. I'll do these in the order that they were received and weed out the ones that have already been asked. First question: after a summer of unrest, downtown Madison looks bad right now, really bad. What can be done?
Well, we need to, first of all, find ways to prevent it from happening in the future. I think we need to be in a position so that these people don't have to redo this every two weeks. But no, I think the business people in Madison on State Street have endured enough, and I know the city council came up with some money, but hopefully there might be some ways for the state to assist them, just like we should assist the people and the business people in Kenosha.
I think you addressed this in part earlier and throughout the course of our time, but I'll take this one up next. Will you ever work with or talk positively about our president? You're the leader of Wisconsin. Why do you continue to bash the president? You wouldn't take help from the National Guard until it was too late for Kenosha. Why not be a leader and work with all?
Well, I disagree with the premise. The National Guard is under my control. The National Guard was brought into play 3 a.m. Monday morning when I had a state of emergency and ordered the National Guard into Kenosha. So the National Guard is something that they were on the job in Kenosha right from the beginning. We responded to every single request the city of Kenosha and the county of Kenosha asked of us. And frankly, the National Guard, whether they were from Wisconsin or that we partnered with through a memorandum of understanding from Arizona and Michigan and Alabama, they did yeoman's work. And so I have no problem with that. I have talked positively about the president when he has done things that are positive. I think he was headed down the right path when he essentially turned the PPE, the protective equipment issue over to emergency management. That just couldn't have worked out any worse the way it was going before then. That was a positive move on his part. I would have, and he initially was working to have a national support around the issue of testing. And I supported that, and as did most other governors, and then he went away from that. So I have praised him when his work has been helpful to the people of Wisconsin, but too often he changes his mind and goes in a different direction. And so I don't think I'm much different than other governors, Republican or Democrat, especially around the issue of COVID.
One more question. Some people feel your initial comments on the shooting of Jacob Blake fueled the resulting rioting and looting. Given your comments today about whether the Kenosha police officer should be charged in the shooting, do you regret saying in your initial statement, and this is a quote from the viewer, while we do not have all the details yet, what we know for certain is he is not the first Black man or person to have been shot or injured or mercilessly killed at the hands of individuals in law enforcement in our state or in our country, end of quote.
Yeah, it was a true observation on my part. Both those things are accurate. I was waiting for a final determination by the investigation, and I still am. Was it an attack? Was it a instance where a Black man was once again shot, this time 7 times, as it has been across this country for many, many years? those are both truisms, and no, I don't have any regrets saying that because those are observations that that I made and are accurate observations.
Very good, sir. We are going to wrap it up then. We would like to thank our panel of journalists, Latoya Dennis, reporter at UWM, WUWM Milwaukee Public Radio, Victor Jacobo, Capitol reporter, CBS 58, and Patrick Marley, state politics reporter at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Thanks as well to our presenting sponsor, Spectrum News One, our sustaining sponsor, Miller Cause, and our event partners, WizPolitics.com, who help us with these events as part of an ongoing series, now virtual in Milwaukee, sponsored by UW Milwaukee, the Wisconsin Academy of Global Education and Training, 1125 at PAPS, the Milwaukee Police Association, the Firm Consulting, and the Medical College of Wisconsin. If you enjoyed this program, we hope you did, and are interested in supporting the Press Club's programming and events, please consider donating to the club's endowment. We have a virtual tip jar waiting for you. Just go to the Press Club website, MilwaukeePressClub.org, and click on the MPC Endowment tab. We would appreciate that very much. And if you'd like to join the Milwaukee Press Club, go online at the same spot, apply for a membership. Again, MilwaukeePressClub.org, and just click on the membership tab. We have more events coming up. In fact, tomorrow we'll be holding our annual meeting in the afternoon on September 17th. Another virtual newsmaker will be happening, this one featuring former chairman of the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission and current commissioner, Stephen DeVogus. September 22nd, we'll be doing a virtual nighting, the first time in club history, a virtual nighting. This one of Scotty Mannion, a longtime friend of the Milwaukee Press Club. We will honor her with our Knights of Bohemia Award. And then November 11th, after the election, that'll feature virtual newsmaker Charles Franklin from the Marquette University Law School. They should have dropped their new numbers just a little bit ago, in fact, so we have something to chew on moving forward, like we need something to chew on moving forward these days. News has not been in short supply. Special thanks to Governor Tony Evers for giving us an hour of his time today and for answering our questions. We hope we can do this again soon and keep this dialogue going.
Thanks a lot, Gene.
Thank you. Thanks again to our panelists, to everybody who looked in. We hope to see you sometime soon, hopefully in person. Who knows? It could happen. In the meantime, we're going to keep it virtual, keep it safe, and keep you informed as best we can here at the Milwaukee Press Club. I'm Gene Miller, Milwaukee Press Club president, host of Wisconsin's Morning News on 620 WTMJ. Shameless plug, but that's who I am. Take care. We'll see you next time.